chose to be here to meet you and to share his best practices with you. So I'm sure you will learn so much from him today. So let's all welcome Michael Bobale.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be here in front of you guys. This is a very, very young crowd. I love the energy. So I was asked here to talk about my experience as a financial advisor. So I have been a financial advisor for 2 years and 8 months. And I will briefly walk through my journey. Okay, so just on show of hands, how many of you here have been an advisor for less than a year? Less than 1 year? Okay, and how about 1 to 2 years? Okay, and more than 2 years. Wow, so we have a mix of advisors here.
Just to make sure that we are very productive with our time, please open for Q&A before I start. Would that be okay? Any question?
Any questions?
Go ahead.
When you were starting, what was your market and how did you tackle that market?
Okay, so what was my market? Siguro the first background was before I became an advisor, my grandma's younger sister, my lola, has been an advisor for 25 years. So because of that, my national market was cut in half. So I had to look for other markets. And I worked in the BPO industry for 5 years. And so my national market then was call center agents, team leads, and managers. So yeah.
A while ago, it was mentioned that you graduated with a degree in psychology.
Yes.
So what happened? Why did you shift to being
That's a very good question. It was actually due to a personal tragedy that I decided to pursue this path. So I should probably start. So I graduated from Ateneo with a degree in AP psychology, and I worked for 5 years in the BPO industry. It's a call center setting, but during those 2 years, I was a licensed stockbroker. Has any of you here seen the movie Pursuit of Happiness by Will Smith? Okay, so during that film, he was studying for an exam. That was the Series 7 exam. You need to pass that in order to become a stockbroker. So I had that license, and so for 5 years, I was placing trades over the phone, hence the call center setting, for stocks, mutual funds, options. And on my 5th year, I was promoted. I was a manager. On my 5th year, I was training manager. Basically, at that point, I was in my mid-20s. I was healthy. I was at the top of my game. And then on my 5th year, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, ovarian cancer, stage 3. And when I found out about her diagnosis, I rendered my 30 days right there and then. But I did lose my mom on the same year, and so after that I was distraught, and I decided to go to the family business. So I was in the family business for 5 years. The family business was into restaurants, construction, real estate, and hotel and resorts. And then one day, a friend of mine from high school talked to me about insurance. And at that point, I already had 3 insurance products from different companies. So it was very easy for me to digest the concept of insurance. It took me 1 day actually to decide that I'm going to do this full time. By the way, how many of you here are doing this part time? Okay, and full time? Wow, it's a lot of full timers. So there, I have been from day one. I decided to do this full time, and then at that point, Film Life was offering this entrepreneurship program. Basically, they are trying to attract high-performing individuals to shift from a regular paying job into variable income. And I was the first advisor in that program. And then the rest is history.
What's your top 3 most exciting part of this career?
Okay, top 3 would be number 1. I actually, despite being an introvert, I love talking to people. I've enjoyed building relationships with people. Number 2, it was very passive, but because people have been asking me what I've been doing with my career, so eventually my friends ended up joining my team. And now I have this very constructive, this very positive group of people working with me. So that's number 2. And then number 3, I think, is the travel incentives. So in the span of 2 years, I've been to Orlando, to LA, and to Singapore. So that's because most insurance companies offer a lot of travel incentives, and I think for millennials, that is a very attractive offer. So, any other questions?
I'm just curious.
Yes.
If I may.
Yes.
You said that you entered this entrepreneurship program. That was the reason. That was what attracted you to join.
Yes.
In the full-time program. What in particular did you find that was really exciting in that program that made you say yes to that?
That's a very good question. So when I was in the family business, to be honest, when I was in the family business for 5 years, I felt like I was just floating. Because it was after my mom's death now. So I would literally go to the office, work for 2 hours, just sign the checks, and then go to the gym. That was my daily routine for 5 years. And then when I decided to work again, technically, it was hard for me to look for a career that will offer the same flexibility of time. So number 1, the most important thing to me is flexibility of time, because as a financial advisor, the struggle here is that not that you don't have enough time, but it's the opposite, that you have a lot of time and you actually need to set your own structure. And that's actually part of my presentation. First part is you need to dictate your own schedule. So that's number 1. And then number 2 is the travel incentives. And the number 3 would be the compensation. Because having your own business changes your mindset. If you're used to a fixed income scheme, when you become a financial advisor, you realize that your worth as a person cannot be dictated by a per hour rate. So that's what I always tell people, that it's important that when you go on board, you set your own goals. For example, let's say your goal is to earn 50,000 per month as a starting. So you have 4 weeks in a month. What if, let's say, on your first week, you are able to meet your target? So that means you have 3 weeks left to do whatever you want. You can do that to earn more, or you can do that to spend time with your family. And that's what I've been doing, because when before my mom got sick, I would usually see my brothers maybe once or twice a year. But now I made a conscious effort to spend time with my family, because my family, they're based in Bulacan and Laguna, and I'm based here in Ortigas. So we would see each other during holidays, but now I make my schedule work around that. Yes. Why Film Life? Okay, when I first First was when before I became an advisor, I had 3 policies. One was with Philip Life. My grandma's sister is also with Philip Life. And so I had experience as a stockbroker, and I know that their mutual funds are performing well. They're in the top 5, usually the top 5 year after year. So that's the reason why I decided to go with Philip Life.
We're getting another projector.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Can you share with us how do you invite people for
Okay, how do I invite this for selling? Okay, how do we invite people? So first off, when I started trading, they usually tell you you have to call people and set appointments. And to be honest, even though I was the very first advisor in the entrepreneurship program, I'm very shy, very introverted, and on my first year, siguro less than 5 people yung tinawagan ko talaga. Because I personally don't like being disrupted from my routine, getting phone calls. So and then I realized later on that there was a study. They say that millennials do not like the very upfront approach. So how I invite people is actually very passive. I just message them. I message them online, and then if it's a referral, I would text them. And then if it's okay to call them, then I pick up the phone. But I normally, I seldom do cold calling. Even when I get referrals or leads from the company, I would usually just message them because my approach has been very passive. Let me just go through it. Okay, so I worked for Ameriprise Financial and Integrate Financial. These are both brokerage firms based in the U.S. And I had 3 licenses back then. And I just want to share, this is one of my most favorite quotes of all time. It's by Richard Branson. He is the founder of Virgin. It says, if somebody offers you an amazing opportunity, but you are not sure if you can do it, say yes, then learn how to do it later. Because for the most part, becoming an advisor is really a leap of faith. Before I decided to become an advisor, I had no sales experience. Yes, I was a stockbroker, but it was inbound calls. Clients were calling us up to place trades, but I was never the one to do outbound calls to offer any product. Okay, so just a breeze through my career. On my first year, I was the Rookie of the Year for our agency. I was also the Advisor of the Year. I was top in policy count. I had around 40 to 50 policies for that year, and I was also top in IPOS submissions. And then this was the 2017 Premier Agency Awards because I qualified for MDRT on my first year. And then as a result, I was sent to the MDRT annual meeting in Orlando, Florida. I would encourage everyone to strive to become an MDRT. Being an MDRT means that you're part of the top 6% more or less of financial professionals across the world. It means that you are doing your job as a professional, that people look up to you. And basically, the conference is a good venue to share best practices with other advisors. And I think the highlight of my first year was that I was nominated as a finalist in the second Asia Trusted Life Agents and Advisors Awards. This was by the Asia Insurance Review. So basically, there were 10 categories. And 5 finalists per category, so around 50 categories. And that year there were 5 Filipinos, and I was one of the finalists from the Philippines. Thank you. I wasn't expecting this part because I just got a nomination from someone, and then before I knew it, I was I was sent to Singapore to represent the Philippines. And this was our picture with the executives from AIA. So basically in the Philippines, we are known as Film Life, but outside, we're known as AIA. And then also after that, I was promoted to associate unit manager. There were around 5 or 6 of us, around 5 or 6 of us in the team. So on my second year, I was able to make it again to MDRT. And I once again attended the Premier Agency Awards. This was I think back in May. And then just last month, June to July, we went to Los Angeles to attend the MDRT annual meeting. Are you guys familiar with Sanjay? So he was there. He's very, very charismatic man. And then I found out just about 2 weeks ago that I was an early qualifier for the PAMI Premier League. So this is basically like the MDRT counterpart for mutual funds. And then last February, I got promoted to unit manager. There are about 14 of us in the team. So that is our group, Synergy Financial Group. The reason why I chose Synergy was because first I didn't want to use my last name. Because my last name is Pabade. It wouldn't go well with the financial system. And number 2, because synergy means, basically what it means is that the sum of individual parts is greater than the individual efforts. So that's what I always strive at. That it's always a team effort. So I know that my topic says mastering the business cycle. And normally, people would think of the economic business cycle, which is the peak, contraction, trough, expansion, but this is actually not my topic. My topic right now is the business cycle for financial advisors. Do you have any ideas? What do you think would coincide within the business cycle of a financial advisor? You mentioned it earlier. Yes. Very good. Okay. It's actually some people may have some more steps, but I think basically these are the basic steps for a financial advisor, and you just need to perfect it. And once you go through it one time, you just need to replicate it over and over, and then that's it. You're all done. So number 1 is prospecting. It's when you try to look for possible clients and then setting appointments, followed by the client meeting, closing, and then policy delivery. Okay, so let's start. The starting point for me is that it's important for you to build your calendar, because without a schedule, it's very easy to get lost in one thing and not accomplishing others. So for me, I decided when I was doing my calendar from the start, since my car is coding every Wednesday, and you know how you adjust everything based on your own schedule. Wednesday was actually my day off. So today is my time off, personal time off. And then right now, every Saturday afternoon, I study level 5 Italian as a hobby. So that's also a personal time off. And then usually every Monday mornings is devoted to team meetings. And then by Monday afternoon, and then Saturday morning is devoted usually for recruitment purposes, since I already have my team. And then Monday afternoon is when I set appointments. So my goal is just to have at least one appointment every day. I know in training, they usually say, you have to talk to 2 people every day. But as time goes on, I realized that, the more feasible way for me is just to talk to 1 person per day. I think it's because I'm now able to better qualify my prospects. So that is how my day looks like, my week looks like. Okay, so now we'll start with prospecting. So for prospecting, there is a lot of sources that you can utilize. There's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Viber, WeChat, the phone book, and even your high school or college diploma. And as I mentioned earlier, when I became an advisor, on my first year, I was only able to sell one policy to my family because everyone, or including myself, was already insured because of my grandma. That's why when people say, wala akong masyadong market, I always tell them that, you know what, you have a lot of friends, you probably have at least 10 friends, and those friends of yours will have their own, you know, family members who might be needing insurance or investment. So you just need to be more creative. Now, I'm very happy that the crowd here is millennial group now, so my presentation is really built around the millennial crowd. Personally, and for the more tenured advisors, this is a bit hard to grasp, you know. But for me, my clients are actually mostly from Facebook and Instagram. So, as I mentioned earlier, I seldom do call-outs. I usually just do messaging. So I mentioned I was a finalist for this award ceremony. I posted that online, and I had roughly around 300 likes. So what I would do is, 2 or 3 days after, I would message those one by one, because I would classify them as warm leads. So I would go through my likers, and I would classify, are these people that I want to turn to clients, ask referrals from, or do I want to recruit them? And I find this more, I find them more warm towards responding kasi nag-like na sila. So yun. Which is why I would encourage everyone here, no, number one is be active on social media. Let them know what you're doing. In fact, when I was starting out, the moment that I passed my IC exam, I posted my exam result so that people would know that you are a financial advisor, and we call that softening the market. And it's normal, like the first time you message people, then you might get seasoned, or some people might ignore you because they're still adjusting to a new career. But the more they see your post, the more they realize that it's something that you want to do for the long term. And that's what I've been doing. So number one, be active on social media. Number two is try to add as many friends as you can. And and number three is socialize. Say hi, say hello. And in my case, sometimes I would tell people, okay, let's meet up for coffee. And when I say meet up for coffee, I do mean just coffee. I don't mention business. So I make sure to separate personal from work. That way, they'll realize that si Michael yan, he is a financial advisor, but at the same time, I know na pag minit ko siya, hindi niya ako basta-basta bibentahan without me asking. So that's why I'm very active on social media. Next is, so also I would post some outdoor activities with friends, but this one is tied in with Tulang Vitality because we have this wellness program, and my friend was actually wearing the shirt. So that one also had several likes. So same thing. After 2 or 3 days, I would usually go through them and message them afterwards. And then this one, so when I was in the US, I went to Utah, and then I had a photographer friend take photos. So I would also post these. I call this social media and the lifestyle posts. And then those people, that's also a way for you to refresh your prospect list. And then another thing that I do is, so I'm very active on social media. Like this was for last month. I would actually make infographics, awards for. I would make a graphic for each award for my team members, and I would post it on their wall. In this case, it was my best friend who posted on my wall, so that So hindi naman siya awkward. So we would do that kasi like I had a new advisor, he had like 300 posts, and then I told him, oh, so kalaman ko wala ka masyadong market. You have 300 people here supporting you, so these are people that you can actually reach out to. So that's what I do. And this one naman, I call this the informational post. So every now and then I would come up with these posts about work, and I would also try to reach out to people who are inquiring. And then those willing to allocate a budget can do boosted posts on Facebook. I'm sure your training team has probably told you about how to maximize Facebook. Like for this one, I had a career talk at Philippines. It was a boosted post, and it had around 900 likes. So that's a good way for you to expand your market. Although this one was targeted mostly for recruitment purposes. Any questions? This was also for my team. An example of an infographic I made, I called it a mutual understanding. So we're trying to make investing more digestible. It's a three-part series that says part one was how mutual funds work. Number two is getting started on mutual funds. And then part three, it says diversification through mutual funds. So part one basically just talks about mutual funds. So investors pool their funds, the fund manager will then manage their funds. This will be invested into securities, and then they tend to earn earnings over time, and those earnings will be passed back to the investors. So that's part one. And then I would use pictures of my team members for publicity. And then the next post was how to get started. Number one, you need to consult a certified investment solicitor. You need to fill out the forms, and then you need to regularly top up into your account. And then lastly, diversification through mutual funds. For example, for a minimum of 1,000 pesos, you can already invest in a mutual fund that is invested in the Philippine Stock Exchange Index. So this is one way to get their attention. Believe it or not, from these posts, every now and then I would get inquiries. And actually, from this post, about 2-3 months ago, I had around a 12.8 million investment because of what I posted online. Okay, so we're done with prospecting. So basically, in my case, I utilize social media in order to get a fresh set of prospects by Monday. The second one is setting appointments. Now, I always tell people that you can do a lot of things with your time. You can go to the office, you can make hundreds of presentations, you can do a lot of admin work, but if you are not setting appointments, you are not getting the ball rolling. So, and I know that for most of us, setting appointments is the most dreadful part of being an advisor, because regardless if you are a new advisor or an NPRD, whenever you try to set appointments, you always feel vulnerable. Now, has anyone heard of the term "eat that frog"? Yeah. You have? Oh, very good, nice. So this is my guiding principle when it comes to setting appointments. So let's just
time management that many people have said has changed their lives forever. So get ready, take notes, and be ready to take action afterwards. One of the most valuable time management skills you can develop is the habit of organizing your tasks by priority. I refer to this process as "eat that frog." Many of you are familiar with this phrase, but for those of you who are not, the "eat that frog" concept means practicing the habit of tackling your biggest, most important task first. This task, or frog, is the one that you are most likely to procrastinate on. It's also the task that can have the greatest positive impact on your life and results at the moment. It comes from a story by Mark Twain, by the way, where he said, the first thing you do each morning is to eat a live frog. You'll have the satisfaction of knowing that's probably the worst thing that's going to happen to you all day long. And your frog is your biggest, ugliest task. So we say, do the worst first. Now, the best way to organize your life is to use what we call the ABCDE method. The ABCDE method is a powerful priority setting technique that you can use every single day. Here's how it works. You start off by making a list of everything you have to do for the coming day. Preferably make your list the night before, or at least the morning before you start work. Never start work without a list. Think on paper. You then go down your list and you place an A, B, C, D, or E before each item on your list before you begin the first task. An A item is defined as something that is very important. This is something that you must do. It has serious consequences if you do it or you don't do it. This is a task that if you don't do it or fail to do it, like visiting a key customer, finishing a report for your boss that she needs for an upcoming board meeting, then it's going to be serious. People are going to be all over you. These are the frogs of your life. These are the things you've got to eat first. A B item is defined as a task that you should do, but it only has mild consequences if you do it or not, like returning a phone call, going for lunch with a coworker, even checking your email. These are not major tasks. These are the tadpoles of your work life. This means that someone may be unhappy or inconvenienced if you don't do a B task, but it's nowhere as important as an A task. Returning an unimportant telephone message or reviewing your email, as I said, would be a B task. The rule is that you should never do a B task when there's an A task left undone. You should never be distracted by a tadpole when there's a big frog sitting there waiting to be eaten. Now, a C task is defined as something that would be nice to do, but for which there are no consequences at all, whether you do it or not. C tasks include phoning a friend, having coffee or lunch with a coworker, or completing some personal business during work hours. This sort of activity has no effect at all in your work life, and you know something? Most people spend 50% of their time in C tasks that have no relevance to their work at all, and then they wonder why they're not getting ahead. A D task is defined as something that you can delegate to someone else. The rule is that you should delegate everything that anyone else can do so that you can free up more time for the A tasks that only you can do. An E task is defined as something that you can eliminate altogether, and it won't make any real difference. This may be a task that was important at one time, but which is no longer important to yourself or anyone else. Often it's something that you continue to do out of habit or because you enjoy it, but every minute that you spend on an E task is time taken away from a task or activity that can make a real difference in your life. The key to making this ABCD method work for you is to practice discipline and start immediately on your A task and then stay with it until it's complete. If you have several A tasks, list them A1, A2, A3, and start on your A1 first. Use your willpower and your mental strength to get going and keep going on this one job, the most important single task you could possibly be doing. Eat the whole frog and don't stop until it's finished completely. This alone can double your productivity the very first day you begin using this system.
Alright, so there we have it. The reason why I decided to play this video at this part of the presentation is because I feel that setting appointments is an A task. And before doing anything else, before polishing your PowerPoint, before talking to your teammates or doing some admin tasks, I would encourage you to always make it a point to set a specific time of the week to do appointments. And any questions? Not so far. Okay, so how do I set appointments? I usually just message them on Facebook. It says here, for example, hi Donnie, I'm currently doing comprehensive planning. for former colleagues. If you're interested, I can stop by your office one of these days. It usually just takes around 30 minutes, no commitment is necessary. And then his reply was, seriously, I'm thinking of getting another policy. Meron na ako part life insurance, part investment. So this person ended up getting insurance. But this is not always the case. Like for the second example, I reached out, I said, hi Marty, just wanted to reach out if you're interested in financial planning. And his response was, I'm not really into insurance and mutual funds. And when he said that, I just said, no worries, thanks. And then I just, you just do not burn bridges. I just kept the communication open. And then eventually he messaged me, he says, Mark just had a baby. And I think he's interested to get his baby a trust fund or something. So I said, okay, can I have his phone number? And then here's his phone number. So even if a person does not get a policy from you, you can still use them as a resource person, as a contact person. The important thing is that you just keep on messaging them. And then again, just like what I mentioned before, just go out, be social, and try to meet as many people as you can. You don't even have to mention your line of work. Just let them know that you're the same person. Because I feel that when you become a financial advisor and you meet a person for the first time after so long, half the time you're trying to establish that you're the same person. That you have not turned into this sales person, this aggressive, pushy person. So I guess that's one of the challenges really of being a financial advisor. And then you go to a client meeting. For a client meeting, I would encourage you to go to the venue at least 30 minutes earlier, and then try to avoid noisy venues at a Starbucks. But sometimes talaga it can't be avoided. And then it's good to position yourself. Try to look for a good spot. And then there's a psychology behind it. Like some clients do not like the quality of them being too enclosed. So let's say if there's two of you, wag niyo lang siyang parang sexy kid or I don't know. And then also if there are passers-by on one side, try to face them, to make them face you. Or if they can face a wall, that's even better. Para walang distraction. And then this is something that I learned last year in Orlando about client meetings. I would always start with this line. So thank you for meeting me. There are actually two reasons why we are meeting today. Number one is just so we can gauge each other and see if we can trust each other, because financial planning is a lifelong process. And number two is so I can collect information from you. Now, by saying those, so two things. Number one is so we can gauge if we can trust each other. And number two is so I can collect information from you. So by saying number one, they realize that it is a two-way process, that they also need to qualify to become a client. And then number two, when you say that I'm here to collect information, it just makes things easier when you're collecting, when you're trying to make a proposal. At this point, they just seem more open to providing information. And then when I was starting out, I usually would have a very short presentation about the available policies. Now this is a sample. I call it Money Matters. So I would say, thank you for meeting me. There are usually several aspects that we need to prepare for when we talk about comprehensive planning. There's investment planning, healthcare component, there's retirement planning, and of course there's life insurance. Now let's go to investment planning. For this one, I would usually go to the BSP. So the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas would usually publish every quarter the inflation rate report. And right now, the average inflation rate is 4.3. But for this one, it's actually at 5.2. What this means is the prices of commodities right now are increasing at a rate of 5%. So imagine that the increase is at 5%, but your money at a bank is earning around 1%. So if you want to save up for your future, you need to put your money someplace else. And this is where other options come into play. For example, you can put them in mutual funds. Now, I'm not saying this is the only option, but it is one option that you can use if you want to have your fund professionally managed. If you are the type who, if you consider yourself a sophisticated investor, then go ahead. What you can do is open a brokerage account and do the trading yourself. But if you would rather have someone else do the trading for you, then you can invest in a mutual fund since it is professionally managed. For example, the historical growth for these mutual funds are the following: 7.2, 30.1, and 15%. So these are all way above the 5% inflation rate, because your goal is for your money to outperform the inflation rate. Otherwise, by the time you retire, your money would have lost its value. Next would be healthcare. Usually for the younger people, healthcare is easily neglected because we're healthy. We can stay up late and not get sick for an entire year. But even if you have your HMO coverage, HMO is usually coterminous coterminous with employment, and it usually ends at age 65. So what I would say is, one of the main reasons why people go bankrupt is because of hospital bills. That's why it's very important for you as early as now to have it settled. It's important for your investment to have a healthcare component that will take care of you until you grow old. And then during one's lifetime, there's a 60% chance that one will suffer from a major illness, and the person you're talking to probably know at least one person who suffered from cancer. That is what I always highlight when it comes to healthcare. And then, according to Mr. Merida, he is the president of Insight. He's also a public speaker. He says that healthcare is an important key to wealth management. Also, if you are a Filipino living in the Philippines, then you have a healthcare problem. Why is that? Because our coverage, our government coverage for PhilHealth is not enough to cover the expenses of a hospital bill. And then healthcare should also be preventive. So this is just a short video. So it just shows, the two opposites. Because when it comes to healthcare, it can be reactive or it can be preventive. And then there's also retirement planning. Now, for most Filipinos, the idea of retirement is relatively new because we don't really plan ahead of our time. And they say that, especially for the baby boomers generation, most of them have no retirement funds. In fact, 92% of Filipino retirees are not prepared for retirement. And I always tell them, if you don't have a retirement, let's say you end up retiring at age 60, and then let's say you live up until age 80, which is the average age. If you're alive for 20 years and you don't have enough savings, how will you go about your life? Will you go back into the workforce, or do you intend to use your family as your retirement fund? And also, recently what I've learned is retirement planning actually, on the average, takes about 20 years. So if you want to establish a retirement fund, it has to be established at least 20 years before your retirement age. Otherwise, you would be doing a cash-out contribution, which is a more expensive way of establishing a retirement fund. Lastly is life insurance. Some people would say, I don't need life insurance. And we have a lot of, I'm pretty sure that you have your own skills when it comes to life insurance. I always tell them that if someone is financially dependent on you, then you need life insurance. If you are single, do you need life insurance? I would still say yes, because you still need to establish your own cleanup fund. Diba? Kasi I would tell them, kung magulang mo na yung nagbalak sa'yo, nagpa-aral, pati ba yung pagbabalik yung magulang mo? Diba? So I would always tell them that life insurance is the integral part of any form of investment. And when you come to think of it, when a person passes away, everything they own turns into life insurance. Even their investments will turn into life insurance, technically. So, and then this part, so you can see how in 5 to 10 minutes I can do an entire presentation about the different aspects of a plan. And I will tell them which among these are more important to you. Do you want to grow your money to beat inflation rate? Do you want health and hospitalization coverage, accident and disability coverage? Do you want to prepare for retirement, or do you want life and income protection? And a lot of people usually say everything. I would like to have everything. And in that case, what you can do is, instead of getting individual plans, instead of getting an HMO plan, a brokerage account for investment, a retirement fund, and a life insurance, what you can do is get a comprehensive plan that has all components in one plan. And usually millennials are very much into the whole, making things simple, making things easier, because with one comprehensive plan, you have one account number, you just have to make one deposit a year, and you're good to go. So that's how I do a client presentation. Now for closing, my goal for closing is just to seal the business. So when I go into a meeting, sometimes our goal is to have is to close the client during presentation, but that it doesn't always happen. So if that's the case, then before you go into a meeting, just come prepared, bring all the necessary forms, make sure you have all the needed information. And I try to do it as quick as possible, because to be honest, they can still change their mind until the point that they've already signed up and actually paid. Because sometimes clients would actually sign up and then deposit. So the important part for closing is that you're able to get everything done. And then policy delivery, this is the time personally that I use for gathering referrals. Because usually when you deliver a policy, it will take 5 minutes to explain the entire plan. And then after that, it's just chit-chat. So I would use that to collect referrals. And based on experience, the most effective referrals are the ones where they would either accompany you to a client meeting, or they would actually call up the person that they're referring. I just think that it's more of like a transfer of trust. Instead of having them provide you a list of names, if you want quality referrals, it's good to have someone else back you up. But one form that I use is this one. I call it the mother of our referrals. So it's a way to, if you want to gather a lot of names, just to help them narrow down, they can write down their family members, their friends, their neighbors. So this is another way to get referrals. And then after that, you just start over. You set your week and then do everything else. That's pretty much it. That's how you master it. Any questions? Alright, well thank you so much for your time.
I'm impressed with being in the industry for SNT. You guys have created so much power for yourselves. What's your top 3 most important successful disability life that you're able to
Top 3. I would say number 1 was when I decide on something, I intend to succeed. That's why when I became a financial advisor, I decided to do it full time. I decided to pursue the entrepreneurship track. Back then, I was I was the only one in the program because the program has a monthly quota, unlike a regular track where you pretty much control your own business. So that's number one. Number two is I think I was able to being a financial advisor is something that I'm able to incorporate into my life. So like when I go to the gym, I would usually tell people that it has something to do with physical vitality, with being healthy. And when I do further studies, it's something that I do because I want to further my knowledge. So if you're able to find a way to incorporate your career with your daily life, then that would be great. And then number three is the lifestyle post. This career has allowed me to travel. It has allowed me to do a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to do before. And I think when people find out that you seem to be successful, but I don't see you working every day. I think that's also one way to attract millennials.
Any more questions?
Hi, Mike. What's your turning point? Like, when is that point in your life when you said, this is the career that I want to do for the rest of my life?
Okay, so so basically when someone talked to me about becoming an advisor, and I said yes, I just wanted to succeed, but I had no idea what it would entail. Since my clients were from the BPO, I had no idea that it would end up talking to them over lunchtime, which was 3 a.m., usually for call centers. But what my turning point was when I had one client. So I was presenting to a call center, to a group of call center people. There was someone who literally just walked in and he said, sige, kukuha ko. He got health insurance and he paid 1 quarter of premium. And then after 3 months, he was in the hospital. And it was a long-term hospitalization. And then at that point, he ended up maxing out his HMO coverage. He ended up incurring debt. And at a point where everyone's taking money away from him, he got hundreds of thousands from Fulfillment Life because he had a daily hospital income of 5,000 per day. And to be honest, because of his critical illness, he probably won't be insurable at this point. So when I realized that you are really changing people's lives, and it's not just about that, it's about the living benefits, then I realized that this is what I should be doing for the rest of my life. And then that story spread like wildfire in their company. That's why until now I still go there and present to their employees because now he's like my personal spokesperson.
Okay, so for someone new in the industry, what would be that one massive action that they need to take for them to change the course of their career here in this industry? One massive action.
One massive action.
Let's start.
Okay, so I think that for the most part, being an advisor is about perception management. And I tell this to my advisors as well. Like if you are used to doing political posts on Facebook or talking about some, posting pictures or videos of some trivial things, I would ask you to go to your page and then click on View as Public, and then see if you are the kind of person that you yourself would invest in. That's number one. I try, since I became an advisor, my posts have been very either about investing or about sports. But I've already steered away from polarizing topics such as politics, religion. So that's number one. You need to manage how people perceive you, and then number two, let people know that you are a financial advisor. Because otherwise, you'll become a secret agent. If no one knows you're an advisor, then no one's going to invest in you.
Mike is actually my advisor. So he gives me the excellent
service. So can you give us tips on after sales?
Yes, so I guess it's no secret that as an advisor, you get the bulk of your commission on your first year. And basically, like in our case, by the fourth year, you pretty much get nothing from the policy. But it's I've made a conscious decision to meet my clients at least once a year. And then also, like 3-4 months ago, when the stock market went down, and then I had a lot of clients that were invested. It was a good point for me to catch up with them, to do some fund switching, and it's also a good way to get new businesses. So the good thing about social media is you don't have to see them in person. I do have a birthday tracker on my iPad, so I'll know when it's someone's birthday, so I can greet them happy birthday or Merry Christmas, and then also just try to make it a point to meet up with them. Like for example, in November we have a fun run, and I invited a lot of my clients to join, just so they know that we can also have fun together, and it's not always about financial